big, huge thing lately is let's start with Nico Horner, offensively, been absolute stud. Cody Bellinger, way overperforming what the league thought of him this offseason for us to even be able to get him. And just outperforming, I would say, what a lot of us expected. I mean, I wanted this Cody Bellinger, but he's outperforming what I expected Cody Bellinger to be. Dansby Swanson has been rock solid, cutting down on strikeouts. The power numbers will eventually come, but he's been rock solid. You have a lot of guys in the offense, and then you have Morale joining in absolutely just mashing. But you have a lot of guys who are, I would say, overperforming offensively. But then you look at these numbers, they are dead last in runners left on base. They're averaging 7.61 runners left on base per game. And then you look at runners left in scoring position. They're third to last, 3.76 runs left in scoring position per game. And I think I posed this on Twitter last Monday of like, you look at this lineup and the thing that it's missing is a big run producer. A guy that like a solid DH, like I think like Nelson Cruz back in the day, like he was just a rock solid guy in any lineup that just drove in runs, like a Miguel Cabrera that could just drive in runs, like a later in career Miguel Cabrera. That's all he did was just high RBI guys that come up clutch. And you look at, like, I think Bleacher Nation put out a great article on the two whys, like the two struggles this year with the Cubs. And one was like the clutch stat of like, this team isn't like they can't produce when scoring opportunities are there, or they can't do the baseball play of moving a runner over and just taking a good at bat. You see way too many strikeouts or pop-ups, and it's just not doing the small things of what you're taught all through high school to do, of like, hey, give yourself up, drive the ball in the air to driving a runner from third, hit the ball to the opposite field to move a run or from second base to third. Like those things that you just come second nature a lot of times that they're just not doing. Like, I don't know if they're pressing. I don't know. I wouldn't say pressing, because I think that's overused a lot of times, because I think it's Major League Baseball. They're going to feel pressure every time they come up to bat. Like, it's just, but like they aren't right now doing what they need to do to be able to win these games. And it's losing those things in the margins that's costing them a lot of wins. And so I looked up, and Bleacher Nation had this post on there with this stat. So 2023 base runs, it's on Fangraphs. So here you look at the actual standings. So Brewers 25-21, which you look at this division, it's wide open, folks. Like 25-21 is leading the division right now. We have Brewers, Pirates, Cardinals, Cubs with a record of 20-25. But if you go over here to the base run stat, which what base runs is, I'm just going to read what they have as their definition. Base runs is a formula designed to estimate how many runs a team would be expected to score or allow given their underlying offense or defensive performance. In other words, base runs is a context-neutral run estimator used to evaluate teams. The output of base runs is an expected run total, which we present on the site as per game basis. So what it does is it projects how many runs they're going to score and what your record should be based on these stats. And they kind of have a formula that uses hits based on balls, hit by pitches, and home runs, innings pitched. Like they have this formula that they work out to be able to project how many runs they should have. Or is it just bad luck? And so when you look over here and you click on this little stat here, the Cubs should be 28-18. based on the base runs of here they are getting guys in scoring position, opportunity to score, and the Cubs aren't scoring them. But if they were to get base hits in those situations and driving those runs, the base run differential would then put them at that record. I don't know if I explained that clearly enough, but like it shows that there's opportunity where if we were 28-18, this conversation in this podcast would have a way different feel, way different vibe.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it's that, like, it's those 1-run games, or even like our run differential. I can't even remember what our run differential is right now. We're 21 plus 21 right now.
And that was after being like minus 37 in the last road trip or something.
Yeah. We're plus 21. That's the best in the division. The Reds are minus 43. Brewers are minus 2. So here, I wonder how many 1-run games we've lost. 1, 2,
10. I think it's 10.
10. That's
I think we're 2-10 in 1-run games.
I mean, that's like that.
That's what goes to show. I mean, like what you're talking about, the base runs, like it's the same thing. Like it goes to people. I don't know. I've been made fun of on Twitter and on this podcast by Jeff for being a numbers guy, being a numbers nerd. And I think it's the reason why I take to those numbers, and I would like the numbers that you just went over, like are in a perfect example of the underlying numbers. And I'm glad that, and I'm not surprised that we have a way to deduce like team-wide underlying numbers when it comes to the record, and like the projected record. And then, of course we have underlying numbers for like how individual players should be playing. And what it tells, like what the story tells in a lot of cases, like individual players wise, like I was tweeting with K-Fids about Tyone, because I said there's no way after that brutal start on Saturday, I've just blacked out the weekend.
Saturday.
After that brutal start, I said, he's not that bad. Like he's not this bad. And the underlying numbers show that. Like his expected ERA, I think, was 2 runs lower, which is not a huge improvement. I think it was still like it might have been still over 5, but still it's something. It's showing like he shouldn't be as bad as he's been. And we were talking about that in the context of Tyone versus Wisniewski, and the eye test and the counting stats, or no, not even the eye test, I don't think necessarily, but like the counting stats would say that Wisniewski has been better, and he has. But you look at the underlying numbers. When I talk about underlying numbers, I mean like how hard, like the quality of contact they're giving up, stuff like ground ball rate, the chase rate on pitches in and out of the zone, or chase rates obviously out of the zone. There's a bunch of stuff. Like if you haven't gone on Baseball Savant, go to Baseball Savant and just look up any player's profile and just kind of dig into the numbers, because it's super interesting stuff. Also, when a player is all red, it is just like the most satisfying thing to look at. And that's kind of the problem with the Cubs right now, is like we don't really have that player like you were talking about, like the run producer. The question that I have for you, like, do you think that there's anybody on this roster right now who, like, going into the season, you would have expected to be the run producer? Because I have one, but I'm curious if you do.
I mean, I think the Cubs were relying on Bellinger and Wisdom to be their run producers. The one that probably is the best run producer is Ian Happ, of like being able to, because he's cut his strikeout numbers down, could be that. I mean, he sits 3'4". The other one would be Saya. Like Saya needs to be the man,
Yeah.
and he's gotten hot lately, but he
Yes.
went through a stretch. Where was it in their schedule? It was before the Astros series. The Twins and Cardinals, that stretch for Saya, he came up quite a few times. Even go back to like the Marlins series, he came up quite a few times with runners in scoring position and would hit the ball hard and just couldn't find a hole, or he would hit it right to the outfielder. Like he ran through a stretch where he came up a ton of times with guys in scoring position and didn't come through. Now, but that's who I would say would be who the Cubs are counting on for being the run producer.
Yeah, I expected it to be Saya, and I still expect it to be him. Like you said, he's been hot lately. Again, going back to the Baseball Savant page, like they have rolling windows of expected weighted on base average. And I typically look at the past 50 plate appearances because that shows you which way the player is trending most recently. And Saya is trending upward. So he's expected to have a higher weighted on base average. So he's going to, like, inherently, he's going to be producing more. He's hitting the ball really hard. His strikeout rate is 25%, but he's also walking more than he did last year at 11%. So he's got a double-digit walk rate. And like we've talked about on here before, he didn't have a spring training. So he had to go through the growing pains in the early season. But I want to look at something really quick. In May, he's batting 313, 400, 578. So yeah, that can be your run producer if the guys ahead of him are getting on board. So I don't know like what his let's see. Like, I just want to say, like, runners on scoring position. Yeah, runners in scoring position. He's got an OPS of 923, batting 306. So, like, yeah, get guys on base for Saya, and I trust that he can be that run producer. And I think you're right, too. Like, I do think the Cubs probably hoped for Wisdom and Bellinger to be the run producers. And to their credit, while Saya was out, they were those run producers. I mean, they both started the season red hot. Wisdom's been a little bit streakier as of late, but he's still put up, timely hits and home runs when it's maybe not when it's counted, but he's still hitting enough to where fans aren't like complaining about Patrick Wisdom being in the lineup. As a matter of fact, people complain when Patrick Wisdom is not in the lineup, as I think they should right now. He should at least be the DH every day. I think the one thing that's going to be interesting to watch going into this next stretch of games to finish out May here is, well, I mean, Bellinger's on the IL, so like we can't even. I'm curious to see how Bellinger will come back when he gets off the IL, because he was fading pretty quickly. Like his hard hit numbers were going down, his average was tanking. His hard hit numbers weren't great to begin the season, but he was still. You don't need to hit the ball super hard to have good results. I mean, Chris Bryant has always been a great example of that. Bellinger historically, when he's played well, has hit the ball hard though. And I think that was the kind of thing that like kept me from being fully bought in that he was back, not to mention the fact that it was a small sample size that we were looking at. But yeah, I think there are definitely guys in this lineup who can be run producers, but just going back to the luck, for one reason or another, the balls just haven't fallen in. The timely hitting just hasn't been there. But I don't think that means that it's not like in the Bleacher Nation article you referenced, like Brett said that he doesn't think that clutch is like a predictive thing. Like it's not something that like is going to predict what happens the rest of the season. It's something that's going to fluctuate more. And I think that's probably true.